Voidmage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps, Voidmage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Voidmage Gamer's channel. Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander Top 10 video. This time we have War of the Spark. This set is just stacked with Commander stuff, making it very difficult to form a top 10, but I tried my best. And contrary to what you might think, my top 10 isn't just filled with Planeswalkers, even though the set is filled with Planeswalkers, because while there might be a lot of Planeswalkers to choose from, most of them have pretty tame abilities. There are a handful of standouts though, and I will mention those. But as always, what we do with these videos, I started off with the honorable mentions. We're not going to go over too many cards just to save some time. We did see some cards that are going to slot in pretty well into a lot of current strategies, such as Cruel Celebrant and Ob Nixilis. Cruel Celebrant is pretty much just an Orzhov-colored Zulaport Cutthroat, so more of the same really isn't that hard to predict why this would see playability. Kind of the same thing with Ob Nixilis. I believe we see a lot of the same cards in the same strategy. If you're going to be fooling around with Nekasar, this is the kind of card that you might think about playing. Other than that, we do have the new gods. This time around, they brought back some of the old gods from Amonkhet. If you remember the story, I believe Hazaret was the only one that didn't die. So that's why we have the Boar god. If you were wondering why she's absent, that's why. But these are all pretty good. I don't think they're spectacular or going to stand out compared to the rest of the cards, especially the top 10. I just think that their way of recurring this time is a little bit weaker, third from the top. It's not as much of a nuisance for your opponents. But still, you have things like Oketra just getting a zombie army. Kavnek can copy stuff. Nothing that's too outrageous, but they are legendary creatures, and legendary creatures tend to make some sort of commander impact. So let's start it off here with the top 10. Number 10, we have Massacre Girl. Talking about commander options, Massacre Girl is pretty disgusting. Gonna enter the battlefield and kind of be like an Electrickery. And that -1/-1 might kill off some creatures. If it does, each creature other than Massacre Girl is going to get -1/-1 until end of turn. So as soon as you get her out there, the idea is to just board wipe, which can get quite annoying. I have no doubt in my mind believing that this is going to be a pretty good commander option, as well as a good card in one of the 99. If you like Teysa Karlov, and you like getting death triggers, she's pretty much going to be a board wipe in that deck. And what I always like is board wipes that leave you with a creature, so at least you have something when your opponent don't have anything left. But this is black. Black likes killing things. Number 9, we have another commander option that's pretty popular right from the start, Feather the Redeemed. One of the most intriguing commander options because the strategy is so unique. We see other commander options and Golgari in this set and Simic, and they just don't really stand out or do anything too different compared to other commander options in those colors. But Feather the Redeemed gives you something in Boros that Boros really doesn't have, and that's a good engine, a solid engine. You can draw a lot more cards in Boros this time around, and it isn't just about combat tricks. It's about instants and sorceries, and being able to get those cards back to your hand gives you card advantage, which is another thing that Boros really lacks. So a solid commander option, cheap creature, easy to get back out there. Definitely a favorite going into this set. Number 3, we have Finale of Revelation. I do like the other Finale cards, because I think cards that can reward you for paying more mana are going to be perfect in Commander, because it's really the one format where having an excess of mana is almost a guarantee at some point in the game. But this time around, what you get for paying X is more than just simply card draw. You also get to shuffle your graveyard into your library, untap up to 5 lands, and you give yourself no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. So at the very worst, it's just going to be another X-costed, draw this many cards in blue. But if you are willing to pay that extra mana, this can be a pretty powerful spell in your deck. Anytime you can untap lands with a card, in addition to getting some card advantage for it, it's not going to be like a time spiral, but anything that can keep your turn going. Maybe you need to combo and this is what you need. It's a pretty good card. Number 7, we have Nicol Bolas, Dragon God. Now he is 5 mana. I know in my Grixis video I said he was 4. Sometimes I have problems seeing things, but that's still pretty cheap. I mean, Nicol Bolas's, typically run 7, 8 mana, and the power that he has is still significant. In this set, you do have a lot of passives on your planeswalkers. This one pretty much gives him all the abilities of all other planeswalkers, so if you're playing Super Friends, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want to play him. Getting a couple Teferi abilities or Tezzeret abilities could be a significant combo enabler. Or if you have Aminatu the Fate Shifter, you could just blink them back and forth and maybe that's a combo. The other abilities, if they're not too overwhelming, they're pretty solid. You have card draw, you have removal, and you have an ult that is possibly a win con. Kind of like the other Nicol Boluses, so only 5 mana this time around. Pretty powerful. The restriction of being in Grixis colors, though, is still present, so you do have to factor that in. He's not going to fit in every single deck, or as many as a lot of the other cards on this list. Number 6, we have Bolus's Citadel. This card is nasty. What I do like about it is that you don't have to reveal the top card of your library, so it is a little bit discreet. I think people are still going to notice the power of this card. You are able to play the top card of your library. You just have to pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its actual mana cost. So if you like cards like Ad Nauseam, Necropotence, things that basically exchange life for card advantage, you're probably going to like this card as well. While it isn't putting the card into your hand, it actually allows you to play the card, so there is a bit of advantage there. But what really does it for me is that you're able to tap it to sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent is going to lose 10 life. So you have an activated ability here. Maybe it's a suicide thing. 10 non-land permanents is a pretty big cost, but in certain decks, if you think about it, you could have a lot of tokens that you want to get rid of and not really worry about. Maybe it's late game and 10 non-land permanents isn't that big of a deal and your opponents are down to that little life. I do like options and I do like multiple abilities on my permanents. So this card is pretty cool and I think it's going to fit in well into a lot of decks. Number 5, we have Narset's Reversal. This is really cool. It's like a Remand and a Fork and it's still just 2 mana. The cool thing about this though is that you could do it on your own instants and sorceries if you really wanted to. So you could get a second usage out of a Ponder or a Frantic Search if you really needed it. Maybe another Dig Through Time. But of course you could do this on your opponent's targeted removal. There are just a lot of situations where, let's say your opponent uses a Demonic Tutor, being able to copy a spell like that while also bouncing it back to your opponent's hand, forcing them to have to recast it. It's only 2 blue, so I'd be kind of surprised if it didn't see a lot of play in these Spells Matter decks. Really sweet card. Number 4, we have Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge. Now, one of the big reasons why a lot of people are big on this set is because there's so many Planeswalkers, but what's even more important to me is that these Planeswalkers have passive abilities. This might actually be one of the best ones. Creature and Planeswalker spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. If you're unfamiliar with what affinity is, pretty much means it costs 1 less for each artifact you control. It's one of the modern decks that has been neutered to death, but if you just look at this Tezzeret, beyond that, which might be the biggest reason why he's this high, he also has pretty good abilities to back it up. The +2 is a great way to gain life. It's a little unusual and an artifact focused card, but dealing X damage to each opponent equal to the number of artifacts you control is pretty deadly. You also gain that life. You can return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand with his minus, and his ult is pretty easy to get to because he has a +2, so pretty much 3 turns you can get to it, exile the top 10 cards of your library, and put all artifact cards from among them onto the battlefield. So he's a great enabler for artifact decks and gives you 3 pretty powerful abilities in addition to an awesome passive. There have been a lot of pretty sweet Tezzerets in artifact decks. This time around, we get yet another one. Number 3, we have what is, in my opinion, the best Planeswalker in this set for Commander, and that is Liliana, Dread Horde General. I think a lot of people like to judge Planeswalkers on their standard impact, and while Liliana may not have a standard impact, in Commander she does synergize with a whole lot, and in Black, she pretty much does what you want her to do. This time we have a passive that I think is the actual best passive in the set. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card. It's not a May, so you could be locked into a situation where you just deck yourself out. Most of the time that's probably not going to happen though. You're going to be playing a deck that's kind of like Aristocrats, where you focus on killing your own stuff for some sort of abilities, things that trigger. This is going to be one of them. Card draw is insanely popular in Aristocrat decks. Pairing her up with Teysa Karlov, a pretty popular Commander option, is not a bad idea. And like Tezzeret, to back it up, you have 3 pretty powerful abilities, very relevant in Commander when you look for good Planeswalkers. The +1 gives you a creature to block with, but where the power really lies with this Planeswalker is her -4. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. That is insane. It enables her passive. So you have 2 creatures you're sacrificing, you're drawing 2 cards. Each opponent's also sacrificing 2 creatures, and on top of that, there are just a lot of things that synergize with sacrificing creatures, killing creatures off. Mazeret Resurrect Crow Death Priest is going to get pretty massive. Your other creatures are going to get pretty massive. And again, it's a perfect enabler for things like Teysa Karlov. Wonderful ability, probably the most powerful thing about her. And her ult is pretty nasty. If you do get to it, it's going to take a little bit of time, seeing as you're probably going to love using her minus. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. You want pseudo win cons out of your ults. You want something that can get you there, or at least close to get you there. And this is an ult that can pretty much do it. If you pull it off, it's going to be hard for your opponents to come back and beat you, especially when you have a card draw engine on a Planeswalker. Really powerful Lily this time around, and I think she's going to fit in pretty well. Number 2, we have what is probably the most versatile removal and one of the more impactful removal spells you're going to see, Casualties of War. Now, as far as satisfying a need, Golgari wasn't desperate for removal. You had a lot of creatures that could give you non-creature removal, a lot of black creature ETBs that could give you removal. You have things like Assassin's Trophy, but a lot of that was just targeted removal that only gave you one target. Casualties of War can hit multiple permanents, and by multiple I mean one of every permanent type. Artifact, creature, enchantment, land, Planeswalker. Choose one or more, and you don't have to have all targets. It's not like Decimate. For just 6 mana, it gives you versatility that you look for in other cards like Merciless Eviction. But in my opinion, it's even better because even though it doesn't exile, having multiple targets when you have multiple opponents is insanely useful. Land removal is underrated in the format. A lot of good lands. Pretty good one that's coming up here. Enchantments, artifacts, Planeswalkers see more play in this format than really any other format. So it's already probably one of the most useful cards in the whole set. And it looks like it was made for Commander. It's incredibly versatile. And to me, that's really important. And number 1, which in my opinion is probably the best card in the whole set for Commander. When you think about flexibility and being able to play something in whatever deck you want to play it in. Blast Zone, bet you didn't think a land would be number 1. This is probably the best land to come out in a set in a long time. I mean, usually with lands, people focus on mana fixing, fetch lands, getting those reprints. It's very important for some people. But utility lands, a lot of them are kind of small and they don't really have that much of an impact. Reliquary Tower is a good example of something that does a useful thing, but it's not a game-winning thing. Blast Zone is something that is incredibly powerful here. You have the ability to get rid of non-land permanents by just storing up these charge counters. Always being able to threaten with a board wipe is a pretty good thing. Makes it to where your opponents are a little bit more hesitant to play their best stuff, so it does slow them down. It can really punish aggressive decks. And another good thing about the card is that it doesn't enter the battlefield tapped like so many utility lands do. It taps for mana, which just adds more value to this card. It's not going to hinder you if this is one of your only lands in your opening hand. This thing is just fantastic. And if you watched my past top 10 videos, you know I don't usually put lands in top 10s because while they might do something quite useful, they don't really do anything powerful. This card is powerful. Like, put it in every deck powerful. If you're lacking removal, it pretty much fits into mono red, whatever deck you might be looking to get some more versatile removal in. Great card, can hit pretty much everything. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this top 10 list. Let me know what you think about War of the Spark. What cards are you excited for? You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.